Hello, back again on the Top Recap channel. This time I will tell a movie's entitled Killing Season. Let's get straight into the storyline. The story begins by telling us of a war where the Serbian army invaded Bosnia in 1992. Over 200,000 people died in one of the most tragic events in history. In 1995, American military forces, alongside their NATO allies, intervened. With death surrounding them, the American forces stormed a prison where the Serbian troops had surrendered. The prisoners were freed, and the Serbian paramilitary unit was executed one at a time. Eventually, it came down to the last man, who stared at the gun before the trigger was pulled. In present-day Serbia, the same man who was shot years ago, Emil walks through the streets until he enters a bar. He meets up with a man who asks for his money in exchange for a file. Emil opens it to reveal information about Operation Task Force Eagle, the men who captured his base and executed his unit. It seems that even after 18 long years, revenge and murder are still on his mind. As he gets up to leave, he is asked what his plans are. It appears Emil wants to start hunting once again.
Hunting? I'm going hunting.
Elsewhere, in a beautiful forest, Benjamin Ford watches an eagle soar before making his way through a small waterfall. After collecting some sticks, he begins assembling them, along with some leaves, to build himself a small tent. As the sun begins to set, he takes out his camera to capture an incredible photo of 2 deer in front of the sunset. However, when he makes a noise due to his injured leg, the deer quickly run off. With that, Benjamin heads back to his small house, where he prints the photo and hangs it up to dry. That night, as he sits down to eat, it is clear that Benjamin is living a very lonely life, all alone in the woods.
Don't take your guns
To keep himself busy, he trains, chops firewood, and does whatever he pleases. Out of nowhere, he receives a phone call. He answers. It's his son, Chris. Chris invites him to drive down for his grandson's birthday party. However, when Benjamin asks if his ex-wife's husband will be there, and Chris confirms that he will, Benjamin makes up an excuse not to attend. His son is clearly disappointed. This seems to weigh on Benjamin as well. Frustrated, he accidentally drops his medicine down the sink and breaks his mirror. Later, he gets into his car to drive into town to get more medicine, but something isn't right. A shadowy figure watches his car as he drives past. To make matters worse, Benjamin's car engine begins to fail, forcing him to pull over. As he steps out to check on it, Emil appears from behind and asks if he needs help. Initially irritated, Benjamin tells him his services aren't needed, but he soon changes his mind. Emil gets to work, and within a few minutes, the vehicle is up and running.
Yeah.
After a brief chat, a storm begins to roll in. Benjamin thanks Emil for his help and drives off. However, as the storm intensifies and Emil walks alone in the rain, Benjamin turns back and asks if he'll be alright in this weather.
So you alright out here?
Emil brushes it off as a walk in the park. Benjamin learns that Emil is from a small village in Serbia and invites him to stay the night at his house. Once they arrive, Benjamin is curious about Emil's reason for traveling halfway across the world. Emil explains that he wants to hunt an elk to add to his collection. After waiting 18 months for a permit, he was finally allowed to go hunting. Benjamin shows off his bow, which impresses Emil. However, Emil pulls out his own weapon, which has its own advantages and disadvantages compared to Benjamin's. The conversation shifts to war, and Emil makes Benjamin believe they are on the same side. He then points out that the fiberglass on Benjamin's bow could break, something he knows because he once worked in a fiberglass manufacturing plant before the war. Later, Benjamin shows Emil some of the photos he has captured. He offers Emil some dinner. The two sit in each other's company for the vast majority of the night, reminiscing about the past. Benjamin says the Serbian war was nothing but tragic, and he misses nothing about it. With his men dying and the injury he harbored, it was not an enjoyable experience.
This conversation.
As the night progresses, Benjamin opens up about how he has never met his grandson and how his ex-wife has been married for 20 years to the best man at his own wedding. After some more talk about the good old days and whatnot, Emil gets up to thank Benjamin for his hospitality. He tells him he would be happy for him to join the hunt tomorrow. The following day, it seems Benjamin has decided to grab his bow and join Emil on his hunt. After handing him a radio, the duo splits up and creates platforms on top of some trees. Benjamin gets really excited and begins telling a long joke, but he is interrupted halfway by Emil, who tells him to take the shot. Benjamin gets ready to do exactly that, but instead stares at the creature and decides not to harm it. He tells Emil to take the shot instead. Emil then creates a loud noise to startle the creature, causing it to run off. He tells Benjamin that he has changed since the Serbian War. He then fires an arrow, which barely misses but does break Benjamin's bow.
That he protects and preserves his game.
Benjamin is forced to flee and hide as Emil tells him he will hunt him down like a dog. He fires a shot, which Benjamin dodges, then a couple more back-to-back, but all miss their mark. However, the closer Emil gets, the better his shots. He manages to land one directly through Benjamin's injured leg. Benjamin is forced to yank the arrow out and must keep moving. He can barely do so and takes shelter in an old abandoned building. Emil is close behind him, but Benjamin hides beneath his attacker. However, he is quickly discovered. Emil does not kill him, but instead taunts him. Benjamin swears at Emil, telling him to take the shot, but instead, Emil orders him to come out.
So come out. You sit and talk like gentlemen.
As Benjamin moves to sit down, he is kicked to the ground and humiliated. Emil tosses him a rope and demands he thread it through the hole in his leg and tie it up, with an arrow aimed at him.
Through the hole in your leg and tie it. What? Put the stake through the hole in the calf.
Benjamin does exactly as he is told, only to suddenly be yanked off the ground by the rope. The pain is excruciating, and Emil begins screaming at him, demanding he tell the truth instead of hiding in the mountains, running from his past. Emil wants him to confess.
One good cut.
However, Benjamin grabs a stick from beneath him and knocks Emil over, giving himself a chance to cut free. The two men fight until Benjamin is kicked into a river. He is tossed around violently and approaches a massive waterfall. Just in time, he latches onto some rocks and pulls himself to safety. Eventually, he finds his way to a cave and lights a fire. He immediately removes the rope from his leg and begins patching up the wound. Once that's done, his old military instincts kick in. He crafts a bow for himself, preparing for the next encounter with Emil. Sometime later, Emil radios Benjamin and recounts a tragic tale, how his mother and sister were ripped from their homes, violated, and then killed.
And they poured petrol all over the wounded bodies.
The men of the village suffered a gruesome fate as well, left to die in front of their loved ones. Emil wants Benjamin to spill his guts just as he has done, but he receives no response.
Your turn.
Meanwhile, Benjamin's son, Chris, decides to visit his father alongside his wife, Sarah. They get no answer at the door and are confused, as Benjamin's car is there. Their baby is with them as well. At the same time, Benjamin emerges from the woods and spots his guest, his grandson, whom he has never met. However, Emil is on the other side, bowing at the ready. Benjamin radios him to put it down. Emil, accepting that Benjamin will fight back, spares his family.
You want your war? Come and get it.
He gives Benjamin a head start and decides to take a drink from the bottle Chris left behind. However, Benjamin emerges from behind a tree and lands a spectacular shot right through Emil's mouth. Benjamin approaches, mocking him until Emil is knocked unconscious.
Hey, just hold still, let me see.
Soon enough, Emil awakens, still as talkative as before.
It's like with your son.
Benjamin walks up to him and shuts him up.
Nice and simple.
He then decides to make some lemon juice and talks about how his father used to hunt with him, how he used to use a knife to do the job. As he speaks, a can of salt is emptied directly into the lemon juice. It seems Benjamin has a strange torture method in mind.
You think a little bit of pain is going to make me break.
He approaches Emil and begins pouring the lemon juice onto him, making him cry out and scream in pain.
Yes, please.
However, Emil ends up speaking about his job in the Serbian War. He used to make tools for all sorts of things, and the mention of tools makes Benjamin quite excited. He grabs an axe and tries to make his prisoner understand that war didn't just hurt the Serbians and the people in those countries, it also destroyed him.
Really started. But we all know how it ends.
Emil then spits in his face, manages to untie himself, and steals the axe before striking Benjamin down. He immediately grabs the rifle and the bullets inside the house before yanking Benjamin outside and throwing him into the back of his own car. On the way to Benjamin's final destination, Emil tells him that when he was shot in the back, he was paralyzed from the neck down for 3 years. But after all that, he taught himself how to walk, talk, and dress again. He had no help, no parents, no wife, no children. He was left to fend for himself, and the only thing that kept him going was Benjamin.
I had no mother, I had no father, I had no wife.
Just then, Benjamin rises and chokes Emil, causing the car to topple over an edge until it eventually comes to a stop. Benjamin is the first to emerge from the wreckage and tries to reach his gun. Emil, however, shoots a flare gun from behind, causing a fire. But that doesn't stop Benjamin from grabbing the gun and pulling the trigger, only to discover it's empty. Benjamin then tells Emil, "You win," and asks him to end it all. Emil refuses to do so until Benjamin confesses what he has done. He then forces Benjamin to walk up a mountain. Halfway through, Benjamin stops to rest, and Emil comments that his country has beauty, just like America, but it is tainted with blood. He forces Benjamin to keep moving, unaware that Benjamin is slowly cutting through his hand ties. Eventually, Benjamin drops to the ground, unresponsive. However, it turns out to be a trick. He uses a rock to strike Emil, and taking advantage of the moment, escapes. He stumbles upon an old abandoned house and seeks refuge inside. Once inside, he locks the door and walks to the other side, only to break through a floorboard beneath him. He gets up and spots a piano, from which he begins pulling wires, just as the front door is being kicked open. Soon enough, the door is busted down, and Emil enters. He quickly spots his prey, but Benjamin drops a piece of wood from above, buying himself enough time to attack. However, his plan fails, and Emil, losing patience, slices Benjamin open. Once again, he demands that Benjamin confess, but the silence speaks louder than words. Emil has had enough. He points his gun at Benjamin, who asks to be face to face. Emil complies, but another trap is in motion. Benjamin uses his father's metal to stab and neutralize his adversary. As the sun finally rises and hours pass, Emil regains consciousness to find Benjamin finally confessing. He reveals that in October 1995, his unit was the first on the ground, and the first thing they saw was anything but good. The camp had been run by Serbians, calling themselves the Scorpions. Many had surrendered, expecting to be taken to a prisoner of war camp and released in a few weeks. However, Benjamin refused to let that happen. He and his team took the Scorpions to the top of a mountain and murdered them all. Now, he must do it once again. He admits that the war got into his head. It was like poison to his mind. That's why he could never look his son in the eye, let alone his grandson. Emil urges him to end it all, saying they are the same, nothing more than ruthless killers. Benjamin readies the gun, but intentionally misses his shot. He unties Emil and discards the gun. Both men have lived extraordinary lives, but Benjamin finishes his joke from earlier. Neither of them finds it funny. Emil then tells Benjamin it's time for him to finally go see his grandchild. The scene cuts back to Bosnia, where Emil walks into the bar from earlier. He has finally found what he has been searching for, peace at last. Meanwhile, Benjamin gets into a cab and arrives at a house. When he knocks, his son, Chris, opens the door, shocked to see his father standing there. His happiness cannot be described in words.